From its first creation, Smash Bros. Has been a game of revolution. From birthing an entirely new genre of fighting games to spearheading some of the greatest crossovers in gaming history. And maybe most notably, how the fans pushed and supported this game into the most prestigious lights of competitive play. I was introduced to competitive Smash in the Ken and Asin era of Melee and instantly fell in love. But as time went on, and as I sank deeper and deeper into understanding competitive Smash, I found myself finding so many articulate ways to describe certain situations that I thought were unfair. Pretty much anything I lost to. Going online, going to tournaments, or just any casual friend to pick up a controller, tons of complaints just kept coming towards any losing situation. Eventually I would find a moment to snap out of it and really ask, is this really how I want to look at the game? But maybe even a more important question is this the right way to look at the game? Many are aware of the mental game, but unlike tech skill, execution, and combos, it's a far less tangible process, and one that has infinite directions and depth. And therefore, it's a process that's far less discussed, but it's a part of every match that can't be ignored. So what I'd like to do is give you some concrete tips and instruction to help expand your mental game, whether you're delving into researching it for the first time, or you've felt you've reached a plateau with your skill. Let's first get into a term that looms over all of us waiting to strike: tilt. Tilting is the concept that you start to not play your best due to another player's action emotionally compromising you. Most commonly associated with frustration or anger, you throw away your top-notch strategy and execution and make silly mistakes, usually to just find a way to end the match fast. In a single-player game, when we come across a boss that's particularly difficult, we go through what I'd like to call the 6 stages of rage. Stage 1. We're open-minded and ready for a new challenge. A few first-time tries getting beaten, and it doesn't bother us. We may even laugh a bit. Stage 2. We slowly discover things that we consider absurdities for the boss to have, until something happens and we finally yell out, "Oh, come on!" Stage 3. We are now hurling insults regularly and citing plenty of BS moments. Stage 4. This is the ugliest, and when we finally reach the peak of explosive rage to straight screaming, or maybe even violence with inanimate objects. Stage 5. After coming down from your explosion, you sink into a quieter, seething state. And finally, Stage 6. Emotionally, you are drained to the bone. You won't speak a word, and you are now ultra-focused on the boss. With so much time embedded into his patterns, and your full attention on the game itself, and not your feelings, you finally beat it. It's very common for us to go through these same stages during a PvP match, but due to our opponents ever evolving and changing, a lot of us can get stuck in step 3 through 5. Whereas the ultra focus in stage 6, some might call being in the zone, where you just do everything you want to do, execute perfect without emotions, happy or sad, but more of a zen state where you just see the game with no mental distraction. Ideally, we'd like to go straight to step 6, but how do we do that? I believe it starts with managing our thoughts while in tilt. First, list out every general negative thought you have while in tilt. Here's a list of common negative thoughts that loom over us during a match. Thinking about losing matches that you just lost, beating yourself up about a combo you messed up, the match running too long making you nervous or impatient, being upset that something didn't kill when you feel it should have, obsessing about all the ways your opponent's character is BS, wanting too hard for a specific thing to work, getting distracted by percentage or life advantage, getting nervous about being in the lead. And here's a big one. I'm going to lose more GSP! Thoughts like this sneak their way into your head, and before you know it, your mind is 75% somewhere else, while you're running into obvious attacks or just holding smash attacks, and you're convincing yourself it's the other person's fault. Our end goal would be to completely clear thoughts like this while in a match. A good place to start is to first start recognizing when you are thinking of negative distracting thoughts while in a match. Recognizing when you're doing this will give you a bit of power and the choice to snap out of it and get back to the match. When you start going into negative thoughts, override it with a statement like, "What are they doing right here and right now?" to re-jog your focus. This is going to be really difficult at first, and you'll probably need to keep snapping yourself out of negative thoughts multiple times over a match. But as time goes on, you'll get used to the snap out phase and stay in the zone longer to the point where you can go entire matches staying focused on what your opponent is doing right then and there. If a certain match or matches against a certain character really get to you, even outside of matches, what I encourage you and everyone else to do, along with the first exercise, is to accept certain realities and then start looking inward. First, you need to accept that no matter how much you think a certain mechanic is unfair, that mechanic exists, and it's not going to change while in a match. And if you're getting upset at an opponent's style, they'll probably continue to use it. So there's no point in wasting mental energy thinking about unfairness when you could be using it to help observe your opponent more. Even if all the complaining gets a patch, that's still months and months of energy not put towards improving, and you'll probably find something else to complain about within a few days if you keep that mental state. After you accept these things, you should then look inward. Keep some of these thoughts in your head. Where once you would say so-and-so is BS, ask yourself, well, did I really play perfectly there? Is there really no other strategy to implement against this character or player than what I'm doing now? And nobody is forcing me to play the character I play. And when I say this, I don't mean to tell ourselves that we suck and switch characters. Save your replays and start looking at what you're prone to when you're tilted. Figure out what habits you have in a stress situation, and you'll be especially keen to fall for it less and less if you recognize both the action itself and what exactly triggered you to do it. And in that way, you've picked up on one way your opponent is trying to manipulate you. I feel especially in Smash it's important to be open-minded and patient when approaching roadblocks. Experiment with every move or massively mix up the timing and positioning against other moves. Punish has gotten tighter, but the openings are still there. Finally, understand whatever character you pick, it has its own weaknesses, and it's not going to carry you to the top without any time put into it. And while some characters clearly have advantages over others, I believe that any character can be taken really far if enough time and focused effort is put into them. But that's a conversation for another day. Now let's move on to long-term practice and mindset. First off, be patient with the progress of both your mental and technical skill. In both cases, we're not going to have everything executed perfectly on day one, and we may even need to unlearn some things. You have to continue to stay diligent and focused in both mental and technical practice. The worst way to put these mental exercises into practice is to now distract yourself with thoughts of, how long is this going to take before it makes me better? Remember that this is an extremely popular game, and you have tens of thousands of other players vying to be the best, and no matter what you do, it's going to take a lot of time to reach the top. PvP is like trying to climb a wall that continues to grow. But even though the top is continuing to grow, remember that you are also still reaching higher and higher heights, and it is possible to keep climbing faster than the wall is growing. Along with anger or self-attacking thoughts, beware of entitlement. No matter who you're playing or what character you're playing, don't stamp the thought in your head that you're supposed to win. On the flip side of that, Don't let someone's rank or their character's place on a tier list stamp in your head the thought that you're supposed to lose either. Keep a constructive, positive attitude, and be happy when you take things one step farther. Be happy when you've made a combo go a little farther, or when you've discovered a new advantage in a certain situation, or when you've managed to keep your cool and focus a bit longer than usual. Be happy, but also stay focused and keep working to figure out ways to get better. And on the flip side, when you mess up, recognize and digest the scenario. Understand what you did wrong, but don't despair in it. You'll always have another chance to try something again, in many cases within just a few minutes. So don't treat every friendly or quick play match like it's the end-all be-all definition of your skill, and don't be afraid to lose matches if you're practicing something difficult that will pay off later. These are two very important pieces, because otherwise you'll fall into the trap of doing what worked best for you on day one, sticking with what's the most comfortable and safe, and at a certain level you'll plateau. We can be very prone to this while in a tournament, and everyone who's been to one knows that this is a whole other level of pressure, especially when starting out. Tournament pressure is a pressure that can make us scared out of our wits in the moment, and incredibly despairing afterwards. It's very important to remember here as well that again, this isn't the end of our skill, and most places now have weekly tournaments. It's just another step of growth. And the best way that you can get used to that pressure is to dive into it and keep attending more and more, and you'll slowly get used to it. If you play mainly online, it's the same with that pressure of maintaining GSP. Dive into quick play and keep plowing to get used to the pressure. If it's a close match, don't take the points and run. Give one more match to gain strength against adaptation, and in the long run, it'll make you better. With all of these things put into diligent practice, your results should be a mind far less fogged up by tilt and negative thoughts. With that cleared up mind, you'll be much more present moment to moment of interaction with your opponent, and you'll now have room to recognize much more of their habits, more room to predict behaviors and sequences, and increase your adaptation. And also, it'll increase your observation to pick up on more little nuances of the game. Once you've increased your ability for observation, I'd highly recommend that you start taking physical notes, because there's so many little things to keep track of for the future. Acclimating to high pressure and maintaining a focused, positive attitude will help you execute high-level combos in any situation, along with giving you the courage to experiment and try new approaches, leading to more discoveries. A lot of these things can be put into practice with a lot of competitive video games, and even anything competitive in general. But do remember that this is also a major benefit for you. Not just for your gaming skill, but for your mental and emotional health. Remember, this is a game. Even if you want to be the best in the world, you should be having fun while doing it. No matter what you do in life, you'll have struggles and low points, but there's going to be far more journey than destination. So it's worth working every day to shift our perspective to one of optimistic determination. And ultimately, that's going to be the perspective that takes us farther than we could ever imagine. And it's by no means an easy road, but it's a road worth taking.